Marvel's new god, the man who outsmarted the Avengers. Please like, share and subscribe. Episode 31. Roar. The sudden sound suddenly startled the Hulk. His figure jumped sharply. Without the slightest hesitation, the sandbag-sized fist burst out and smashed hard into Lin Fan's head behind him. The Hulk's blow is unreserved, and it is bound to kill the person who opens his mouth with one blow. It's just a pity that it backfired. The Hulk's menacing killing blow actually stopped strangely in mid-air. His fist was only a stone's throw away from Lin Fan. But even at this distance, no matter how much Hulk struggled, there was no way to smash his fist into Lin Fan's head. There seemed to be a layer of heaven between the two, so that he could no longer store it. Roar. For a moment, the Hulks were dumbfounded. You must know that in previous battles, no one would be his opponent at all. Even a tank plane will be easily blasted by him. But at this time, facing a human being, a seemingly ordinary human being, he couldn't even hit the other party. It was clear that his fist had hit Lin Fan, but it didn't cause any damage. An invisible stance isolated the force on his fist. This suddenly made the Hulk feel a great shock. Hulk, I'm not your enemy. Otherwise you won't have a chance to strike. Meeting Hulk's shocked gaze, Lin Fan's tone was indifferent. But what he said was extremely domineering. And almost at the same time, a terrifying power swept out, like a supreme emperor. Suddenly, Hulk's body shook. Meeting Lin Fan's eyes, he felt a tremor in his heart facing natural enemies. It was like suppression from the depths of the bloodline. And it is. Lin Fan, who possessed the bloodline of the divine revelation, after awakening many supernatural abilities, his own bloodline was already extraordinary. The body of a mortal, comparable to the immortal gods. Using the words to describe Iron Man, to describe Lin Fan, nothing more. Lin Fan's physique is very special and can accommodate all superpowers at the same time. And it's a perfect upgrade. This is also the reason why Lin Fan is obsessed with triggering the system mechanism. I'm here to help you, Hulk. Quietly putting away the coercion, Lin Fan said indifferently. I know you hate humans, especially those who hunt you down, but this world belongs to humans. You can escape for a while, but you can never escape from human territory. What Lin Fan said was very cruel, but it was also a fact. That's the plot in the movie. Even though Bruce Banner fled to Africa and even hid in a slum, he was eventually found by the military. If it weren't for Natasha's move, I'm afraid Hulk would eventually become an experimental guinea pig. Therefore, Lin Fan's words were definitely not alarmist. And hearing what Lin Fan said, Hulk's heart lifted up again. He looked at Lin Fan with a look of jealousy and vigilance. But Lin Fan didn't realize it and said to himself, if you don't want to be caught by the military, I can help you and even let you share your body with Bruce Banner. Hearing this, Hulk's eyes suddenly lit up. This condition speaks to his heart. In addition to freedom, what he wanted most was a body, not a vassal of Bruce Banner. But the reality is that he can only occasionally take control of his body. The owner of this body will always be Bruce Banner. If Lin Fan could help him and let him share his body with Bruce Banner, then he wouldn't have to sleep all day in the future. For a while, Hulk was entangled, not knowing how to face Lin Fan. This is a dangerous guy who can't be refused. Huh. Seeing this, Lin Fan saw Hulk's mind at a glance. He waved his hand very casually. Agree or not, you can listen to my conditions first. I have never liked to be strong. Hulk hesitated and nodded. He chose to believe it for the time being. Believe first, then question, this is his only option. Can't really be hard steel with Lin Fan, right? Looking at the defenseless Lin Fan, he had a premonition of danger, and he didn't even have the courage to strike. Sit down and talk. Lin Fan raised his eyes to look at the Hulk and said indifferently. You are too tall to look up and talk to others, which is not good for the neck. Hulk was dumbfounded, but sat down anyway. He's like a good baby. Obviously, he was the more terrifying one, but in front of Lin Fan, he didn't even dare to say a word. Hulk is still very talkative. Seeing this, Lin Fan nodded in satisfaction. The first step of tuning the Hulk was successful. Cooperation is based on communication, although the means are less honorable. But at least the two sides have the premise of friendly communication. Looking directly into Hulk's eyes, Lin Fan said bluntly. Because of an experimental accident, Bruce Banner's second personality, or second soul, is born, that is, you Hulk. So you are Bruce Banner, and Bruce Banner is you. Neither of you can disappear. If you want to be free, you have to reach a consensus with Bruce Banner, not against each other. Briefly introducing the current situation, Lin Fan didn't care if Hulk could understand it or not. He finally asked bluntly. So you want to live in harmony with Bruce Banner? Episode 32. In the face of Lin Fan's inquiry, Hulk was silent for a long time. Although he didn't quite understand, he could feel Lin Fan's kindness, and he really wanted to help him. At the very least, Lin Fan was not one of those who shouted at him to kill. Of course, the most important thing is that Lin Fan is strong, so he is willing to believe Lin Fan. He immediately nodded at Lin Fan. Very good. Lin Fan nodded in satisfaction and chuckled. Then you go back first, I will give you a satisfactory result with Bruce Banner. Roar. Hulk nodded heavily, and then his burly figure changed for a while. Bruce Banner woke up dizzy. Well, my head hurts. Rubbing his swollen head, Bruce Banner only felt sore, as if he had just experienced a big war. But then he suddenly realized something and stood up immediately. But then he fell to the ground with a weak leg. Poof. Seeing this funny scene, Lin Fan couldn't help it. Bruce Banner was taken aback. Who? What people? He was shocked violently, and quickly raised his eyes to look in the direction of the sound, only to find Lin Fan standing in front of him. Looking at Lin Fan, who was harmless to humans and animals, he said suspiciously. This gentleman, you. Did you save me? Bruce Banner realized it later. Although his head still hurts, he has recalled his experience not long ago. Didn't he fall into the encirclement of the military at that time? However, he fell directly into a coma at that time. Seeing that he is now in the wild forest, although I don't know what happened, I think he should be safe. It's none of your business, it's Hulk. Faced with Bruce Banner's thanks, Lin Fan directly refused. He didn't have the idea of robbing the Hulk of credit. Bruce Banner is also pedantic enough, or this is a common disease of the literati. It is clear that the Hulk has saved Bruce Banner countless times. But this guy is good. Without thanking the Hulk, forget it, and still want to research out what serum to eliminate the Hulk. Isn't this proper ingratitude? Grace will take revenge? Lin Fan did not dare to agree with this. Being able to transform into a big, thick and strong big guy like the Hulk at any time is simply the dream of countless men. Of course, since he had a choice, Lin Fan would definitely choose the law of heaven and earth. Talent is the romance that belongs to Chinese men. Hulk? Hearing what Lin Fan said, Bruce Banner was slightly stunned. But then his expression became complicated. For the existence of the Hulk, he actually has very complicated feelings, very grateful but very resistant. It was precisely because of the birth of the Hulk that he fell to this point. But if it weren't for the Hulk, he would have died an unknown number of times, and even became a guinea pig for military human experiments. It is precisely because of this tangled emotion that he does not know how to face the Hulk. So he finally chose to escape. How? Do you think the Hulk is a burden, or even the culprit that caused you to get here? Seeing Bruce Banner's thoughts at a glance, Lin Fan said indifferently. He didn't enlighten Bruce Banner. But since he promised the Hulk, he had to make this matter clear, and then let Bruce Banner make a choice. Either live together peacefully and share your body with the Hulk. Either he can only use certain means. Compared with the humble Hulk, Bruce Banner is too pedantic after all. Lin Fan didn't care what concerns Bruce Banner had. When it comes to his own interests, his primary concern is, of course, to benefit himself and help others by the way. Help the Hulk or help Bruce Banner, the answer is self-evident. Bruce Banner was speechless. For Lin Fan's question, he had nothing to say, and even felt embarrassed by being seen through his mind. And Lin Fan didn't care about this, he took care of himself. I already talked to the Hulk just now, and he promised not to come out casually to affect your life in the future, but the same. What? Without waiting for Lin Fan to finish speaking, Bruce Banner suddenly became excited. He looked at Lin Fan in disbelief. No one knows better than he how terrifying the Hulk is, that angry destructive desire, like a legendary demon. But Lin Fan said that he talked to the Hulk and even reached an agreement? What an international joke. Not to mention that Lin Fan was just a mortal. Could it be that Hulk, the Vandal, can still be calm and chat with people? Bruce Banner was a little skeptical of Lin Fan's statement. Believe it or not. Lin Fan didn't bother to explain and said bluntly. It's not that I look down on you, it's impossible to research a serum that destroys the Hulk. That's a mutation rooted in your genes. And the Hulk is actually your second personality and even soul. With current scientific and technological means, at most, it is to inhibit the emergence of Hulk, just like those antidepressant drugs. Making peace with the Hulk is your only and best option. You don't want to be hunted down by the military forever, do you? Looking down at Bruce Banner condescendingly, Lin Fan's words were very cruel. But he did not have any alarmist statements. The only way to completely eliminate the Hulk is to use mysterious methods, such as soul splitting or the soul out of body of an ancient mage. But alas, Bruce Banner is not qualified to touch these. And he didn't want to contact the Ancient One mage now. Moreover, for the sake of an outsider, why is Bruce Banner worth his risk? Episode 33. Listening to what Lin Fan said, Bruce Banner was shocked. At this time, he couldn't help but wonder about Lin Fan's identity. Because of what Lin Fan said, he fell into despair, unable to accept the cruel reality that he was forever hunted down by the military. Could it be that he could only hide in hiding in this life and become a monster that everyone shouted at? So can he still meet his girlfriend Betty? The answer is clearly no. As long as he dares to show up, that cheap father-in-law will definitely not let him go. He was regarded as the private property of the military. Every time he thought of this, he felt a pang of depression in his heart, desperate for why he was so unlucky. How did you think about it? At this moment, Lin Fan asked again. Bruce Banner struggled. Faced with a stranger's suggestion, believe it or not, the key result is not what he wants. As Lin Fan said, he hoped to completely eliminate the Hulk. And just when he came up with the idea. Roar! Bruce Banner only felt his body twist for a while, and an angry roar came out of his mouth. The Hulk actually wants to take control of his body. Nope. Give me back. Bruce Banner screamed in pain, holding his head. But the Hulk was even more angry. For a while, he seemed to have a split personality, constantly talking to himself, and the color of his bare skin changed uncertainly. All right, Hulk. Have you forgotten what you promised me? Seeing this, Lin Fan directly opened his mouth to stop it. And his words seemed to have magic. As his words fell, the Hulk actually stopped struggling and tried to wrest control of his body. Bruce Banner sat on the ground in embarrassment, gasping for air. His gaze, on the other hand, looked at Lin Fan in great shock. This man. Unexpectedly. He was really able to communicate with the Hulk, and even quieted Hulk with a word? At this time, the Bruce Banner people were stupid. Although he didn't know much about the Hulk, he felt that the Hulk was irrational at all. Every time he looked at the place destroyed by the Hulk, he was afraid for a while. He was afraid that he would get along with his relatives and friends in the future, suddenly transform into a Hulk, and then do something he regretted for the rest of his life. It is because of this that he thinks of destroying the Hulk. But what did he see at this time? Lin Fan just said a word, or even did nothing, so that Hulk obediently stopped struggling. Could it be that the Hulk can actually communicate normally? If that's the case. Phew. Taking a deep breath, Bruce Banner asked respectfully. Dare to ask who is sir? My name is Lin Fan. Lin Fan introduced himself indifferently. He did not say the identity of Stark Industries' executive director. Because in his opinion, that's just that. Compared with the executive director, he felt that his name was more valuable, and the word Lin Fan was enough to highlight his identity. Lin Fan? Bruce Banner was stunned when he heard this, and asked curiously. Could it be that Mr. Lin is from Huaxia? Yes. Lin Fan nodded and said lightly. As you just saw, I've already agreed with the Hulk, so what about your choice? Bruce Banner was silent for a while. Reason told him that promising Lin Fan was the best result. But he still has a lot of concerns in his heart. Even if he and Hulk coexist peacefully, the military will not stop hunting him down. And he can't appear in public as a normal person. What's the point? After a moment of silence, he directly spoke to Lin Fan about his worries. Even if I reconcile with the Hulk, what's the use? It's not a problem at all. Lin Fan waved his hand disapprovingly. If you're worried about the military's pursuit, you don't have to, because it's not necessary. How is that possible? Bruce Banner exclaimed. He is just a civilian, how can he resist the pursuit and killing of the military? Lin Fan was too arrogant when he said this, right? Even if it is as strong as the Hulk, once the military uses nuclear leveling means, I am afraid that there is only one way to die, right? You don't believe it? It seems that you still don't understand. Lin Fan shook his head and said disdainfully. The Hulk's potential is far beyond your imagination, even if it is a nuclear bomb, it will not help him at all. Impossible. When pigs fly. Bruce Banner shouted in retort. But Lin Fan sneered. What do you think the Hulk is? Just a monster? Miss by a mile. Bruce Banner's questioning was also ignored. Thinking of the Hulk's advanced form, Lin Fan thought that even if it was him, he might not be the Hulk's opponent. Especially when it comes to the form of Green Death, it can even tear Thanos by hand. What is a nuclear bomb? It was precisely knowing the potential of the Hulk that Lin Fan wanted to recruit the Hulk under his command. After all, no one said that the system mechanism can only be triggered once. If he waits for the Hulk to turn into a Green Death and then trigger his anti-heavenly understanding, what reward can he get? What would be a stronger ability than Green Death? Wouldn't it be directly beyond the universe? In the face of Bruce Banner's questioning, Lin Fan didn't bother to explain anything. He just said in an indifferent tone. Hulk's strength depends on anger, but it's not just that, you'll learn about it later, I just want to know what your options are. Being looked down by Lin Fan, Bruce Banner was terrified. He always felt that Lin Fan seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. In particular, Lin Fan's understanding of the Hulk is even deeper than him, giving people a mysterious feeling. Facing Lin Fan at this moment, he had a feeling of worship. I want to know how Mr. Lin can keep me and Hulk safe, and... After a moment of silence, Bruce said in a deep voice. What is Mr. Lin's purpose in helping us? Episode 34. Why do you think I helped you? Lin Fan looked at Bruce Banner like a fool. Why is this guy so stupid? Obviously a top scientist, has obtained multiple doctorates, how can people not understand the world at all? Also too lazy to talk nonsense, he said bluntly. A top scientific genius, a powerful superpower, are you underestimating your own value too much? Aha. Hearing this, Bruce Banner was stunned in place. The sudden compliment caught him off guard. I don't know why, being able to get Lin Fan's praise, he actually gave birth to a burst of ecstasy. But then he shook his head secretly and said with a wry smile. Mr. Lin is really fast-talking, it seems that after being hunted down and killed for so long, my brain has completely become rigid. Aha, if you understand. Lin Fan shrugged his shoulders and was non-committal. He then continued. Forgot to tell you, I actually have another identity, which is the executive director of Stark Industries. What? Bruce Banner exclaimed again. At this point, everyone else is stupid. What did he hear, executive director of Stark Industries? How is this possible? You know, Stark Industries, which is the strongest family-owned company in the United States. Even the official has a stake in it. And Lin Fan, a Huaxia man, a guy who had never heard of it before, actually said that he was the executive director of Stark Industries? Could it be that these days when he fled, he was completely derailed from the world? Or was Lin Fan actually fooling him? It's nothing surprising. Lin Fan was not impressed at all and explained simply. I took out a nanotechnology in exchange for a stake in Stark Industries, and these things can be found online. Shoo! Bruce Banner gasped and couldn't help but feel a shock in his heart. Nanotechnology turned out to be out? As a PhD in physics, no one knows the mysteries of nanotechnology better than he does. Even he couldn't guarantee that he would produce results. But Lin Fan actually had ready-made technology? Even with nanotechnology, Lin Fan also exchanged shares in Stark Industries, and the difficulty was even greater. After all, he was well aware of Tony Stark's character. That's an arrogant and proud playboy. Being able to get the shares of Stark Industries from the other party was enough to see Lin Fan's means. Maybe Lin Fan could really help him. Thinking of this, Bruce Banner suddenly said excitedly. Mr. Lin, please help me. With Stark Industries as a backer, What is the pursuit and killing of the military? Moreover, it was nothing more than the private act of General Ross. Scientists working for the military are persecuted. Once this matter is made public, public opinion alone is enough to make General Ross anxious. Choose wisely. Lin Fan nodded and chuckled. I believe that one day in the future, you will not regret today's decision. Saying that, Lin Fan directly pulled Bruce Banner. The surrounding magnetic field quietly flowed, directly dragging the two of them up out of thin air, and flew straight towards Stark Manor. Looking at the scene of the rapid retreat around them, the Bruce Banner people were dumbfounded. Generous gift crab. Mr. Lin turned out to be also a superpower? Not long after Lin Fan and the two left, Natasha led someone to chase after them. But they are doomed to the task. The Hulk's trail disappears here. The subordinate pointed to the traces around him and said with a solemn expression, I found a trace of the second person here, Captain. I suspect Hulk must have been taken by the other party. Well, got it. Natasha nodded lightly, her pretty face slightly heavy. She certainly found out about that, too. But the identity of the second person is unknown, and they can't even find the slightest trace of leaving, and they can't even continue to track. This means that their mission on this trip has failed. Close. Natasha looked deeply at the sky and returned directly. She was to report the situation to the director as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the other side. Lin Fan used his superpowers, and his speed even exceeded the speed of sound for a while. This suddenly frightened Bruce Banner's face pale. Until Lin Fan fell from the sky and landed on Stark Manor, Bruce Banner couldn't even stand. If it weren't for Lin Fan supporting him, I'm afraid he would have collapsed directly to the ground. Lin Fan, this is... At this moment, a voice of astonishment sounded. Tony Stark walked out of the room. Just now, he was staying up late to study, but suddenly heard Jarvis's report. Say what suspicious targets are rapidly approaching the estate. He also thought that an enemy was coming. A glance through monitoring, good guy, isn't this Lin Fan? Those who have superpowers can do whatever they want. He also had to fly with the help of his battle armor, but Lin Fan directly used his superpower to travel in the air, and he could even take a person with him. This gap is not a star and a half, and he is envious when he sees it. This gentleman is so familiar, where have we met? Looking at Lin Fan and Bruce Banner, he looked the latter up and down, inexplicably feeling that the other party was familiar. Tony Stark always felt like he had seen each other somewhere. Ahem, ahem. Bruce Banner coughed violently. Looking at Tony Stark in front of him, he was immediately shocked. He didn't expect that what Lin Fan said was true. But then he breathed a sigh of relief, praised his choice, and promised Lin Fan that it was too wise. At this time, he finally didn't have to worry about being chased and killed by the military. Hello, Mr. Stark. After stabilizing his body, he quickly introduced himself. I'm Bruce Banner. I met you at an exchange meeting, and we talked about gamma-ray research. Episode 35. Bruce Banner? Hearing this, Tony Stark raised an eyebrow. Bruce Banner gave a gentle smile. With Lin Fan's promise, if he could really get the protection of Stark Industries, the threat from the military was really nothing. This made him breathe a sigh of relief, and he also felt very kind when he looked at Tony Stark. It's a pity that Tony Stark shook his head and said, I'm sorry, I really can't remember who you are, I've never been interested in men. Saying that, Tony Stark also shrugged, looking light. But Bruce Banner was directly dumbfounded. It was clear that he respected the other party so much, but Tony Stark actually forgot about him. Bah, scumbag. Sure enough, he deserves to be a playboy. Poof. Seeing this embarrassing scene, Lin Fan couldn't help it. Tony is as proud as ever. However, he could tell that Tony had actually recognized Bruce Banner, but did not admit it. After all, like Tony said, he's not interested in men. Okay, too. Shaking his head with a chuckle, Lin Fan said indifferently. If there is anything you want to say, let's go in and talk about it, just because I have something I want to ask the two. Oh, what's going on? Tony Stark suddenly became curious. And Bruce Banner did not doubt him, closely following Lin Fan, secretly guessing the relationship between the two. Looking at Tony Stark's attitude, it seems to be very friendly to Lin Fan. Couldn't the two be good friends? It seems that if he wants to be a free man, he must hug Lin Fan's thigh. Soon, the group of three came to the living room and took their seats. Lin Fan poured a cup of tea like a master. Originally, Tony did not drink tea, and apart from whiskey, Tony's favorite thing was vegetable juice. Although it was forced to drink to relieve palladium poisoning. And since Lin Fan settled in the manor, Tony has ordered a lot of top tea from Huaxia. You know mine, I only drink. Tony simply refused to drink tea and poured himself a glass of whiskey. Real men should drink to look man. Beware of sudden death. Lin Fan complained lightly and poured a cup of tea for Bruce Banner instead. Bruce Banner quickly said thank you. Listening to the conversation between Lin Fan and Tony Stark, the shock in his heart was incomparable, and he secretly guessed the relationship between the two. Can and Tony Stark smell each other? The two obviously have a different relationship. Could it be that Lin Fan is actually a good friend of Tony Stark? For a while, he became more and more curious about Lin Fan's identity. Let me officially introduce you. Lin Fan took a sip of tea before pointing to Tony Stark and saying, "This is the famous Tony Stark, the man who claims to sleep on the cover of fashion magazines, and the ruler of Stark Industries." Ahaha, Lin Fan, don't envy you. Hearing Lin Fan's introduction, Tony Stark suddenly smiled proudly. He didn't show any embarrassment. Contrary. To achieve this glorious achievement, on the contrary, is his talking point, which is a matter of pride. Ahem, Mr. Stark is really good. Bruce Banner praised awkwardly. For Lin Fan's introduction, he didn't know how to answer the call at all, and the key Tony Stark was not ashamed, but proud. Perhaps this is the debauchery of the capitalists. This is Bruce Banner. Lin Fan smiled and ignored Tony's smugness. He turned to Bruce Banner and said, "Banner is a top student with multiple doctorates and used to work for the military, but due to an experimental accident, his body mutated. Well, how to say, he has a very powerful big guy in his body." Lin Fan said, and said in a very exaggerated tone. "Hulk's strength is so much worse than mine." Military? Variation? Big? Hearing this, Tony Stark was secretly shocked. He was well aware of Lin Fan's strength. Being highlighted by Lin Fan is enough to see Bruce Banner's extraordinary. And he was curious about the big guy in the other party's body. Because of the mutation, there was an additional host in the body, which suddenly aroused his great interest. He immediately looked at Bruce Banner curiously and asked mockingly, "Hey, can you call that guy out and take a look? I'm really curious, how do you all exist together? Wouldn't it be a split personality?" Bruce Banner. Listening to what Tony Stark said, he was speechless for a while. Outside, it was said that Tony Stark had a bad mouth and was rude. At first, he only thought it was a rumor. But now that he has personally experienced, in the face of Tony Stark's unreasonable request, he suddenly became stupid. He really wanted to ask, "Are you polite?" "Okay, Tony, don't joke." Seeing Bruce Banner's embarrassed expression, Lin Fan waved his hand and said, "Tony, if you want to develop a nano armor as soon as possible, Banner is a good assistant, you better not bully people all the time." "Hey, yes." Hearing this, Tony Stark's eyes lit up. Bruce Banner is a talent. Although the two had only met a few times, he had actually read some of the theories proposed by Bruce Banner many times. Now after Lin Fan's reminder, he suddenly realized that he had offended people. This is a top scientific researcher in physics. "Mr. Banner, don't care." With an awkward but polite smile, Tony Stark said seriously, "Actually, I was just joking, do you believe it?" Episode 36. Mr. Stark, but if you need it, just say it. After some jokes, Bruce Banner immediately bowed his head and said, he could have guessed something at this time. The nanotechnology that Lin Fan has. Tony Stark's steel armor. Thinking of the nano armor that Lin Fan mentioned just now, he quickly guessed the reason and understood that this was his chance to be free. As long as you can help Tony Stark, do you still worry about the other party not helping you? I'm afraid this is also the reason why Lin Fan brought him here. He couldn't help but feel even more grateful to Lin Fan in his heart. This person not only has a mysterious origin, has powerful superpowers, and even has such a good relationship with Tony. How could he have never heard of Lin Fan's existence before? Ahaha, that's great. Receiving Bruce Banner's reply, Tony Stark was overjoyed. Nano Warframe is originally very troublesome. Even if there is ready-made technology, it is still difficult to develop a perfect nano armor by relying on his own strength. But with Bruce Banner's help, the process would have been drastically shortened. The other party is not inferior to his top scientific research talents. Didn't you hear Lin Fan say that Bruce Banner once served in the military? Speaking of which, he is quite curious. Bruce Banner mutated his body because of a military experiment. What is going on? Huh? Seeing Tony Stark's careful thinking, Lin Fan did not break it. Bruce Banner is naturally great to be able to help. And he recruited Bruce Banner to help him do research and development in the future, and it was good to practice next to Tony first. In the future, if necessary, he can let these two geniuses join forces at any time. Such a luxurious configuration is probably only something he can enjoy. Let me tell you about the specific situation. Lin Fan clapped his hands to attract the attention of the two, and said to himself, Banner's situation is somewhat special. Because of the mutation of his body, he has an extra Hulk personality in his body, which also leads the military to want to catch him for research. I fancy Banner's scientific research ability and Hulk's combat effectiveness. So I rescued them from the military. If I can, I hope Tony will help keep Banner off and publicly announce the hiring of Banner as a guest research specialist for Stark Industries. Hearing this, Bruce Banner was suddenly ecstatic. This surprise came too suddenly. If it can really be as Lin Fan said, then the military really can't take action against him. After all, he didn't break any laws in the first place. Instead, the military persecuted him repeatedly. Previously, he was alone and had to hide in Tibet, for fear of being caught by the military as a guinea pig. But if Stark Industries was a backer, the military did not dare to move him easily. He immediately looked at Tony Stark expectantly. Is that so? Tony Stark nodded, thoughtfully. It turns out that this is Lin Fan's purpose? As long as you can keep Bruce Banner, you can harvest two top talents at the same time, capable of martial arts, killing two birds with one stone. As for dealing with the military, he didn't care much about it. After all, he had offended more people. And even the military is not monolithic. Among them were several military personnel who were friendly with Stark Industries, such as Colonel Rhodes. After weighing it up, he nodded indifferently. I agreed to this request. Great. Bruce Banner was suddenly ecstatic, even crying with joy. He finally didn't have to hide anymore. He had really had enough of the days when he lost his family, and he never wanted to be displaced again. Don't worry, Banner, you're free now. Lin Fan also smiled and patted Bruce Banner's shoulder. Tony's answer was expected from him. Compared to the price to pay, the benefits of saving Bruce Banner are obviously greater than the risks. Whether public or private, Tony would not refuse his offer. Of course, it really doesn't work, and he is not without other options. It's a big deal to let Bruce Banner go to Huaxia. Now this result, hello everyone, Lin Fan also accepted Tony's favor. Thank you, Mr. Lin, Mr. Stark. Bruce Banner looked at Lin Fan and Tony Stark gratefully. Tony Stark smiled and disagreed. Lin Fan shook his head and said, This is just a fair deal, I hope to have a good cooperation in the future. Saying that, Lin Fan raised his teacup and touched Bruce Banner. The three of them had a good drink, and the atmosphere was not harmonious. Early the next morning. At the behest of Tony Stark, Stark Industries issued a statement announcing the hiring of Mr. Bruce Banner as a guest research specialist. And in the next 6 months, Stark Industries will continue to introduce new research results. Arc reactor as the core of new energy. And nanomaterials with extremely superior performance in all aspects. At the same time, the Weapons Research and Development Department is officially closed. As soon as this news came out, the whole network immediately boiled. Countless people were shocked by Tony Stark's big hand and Stark Industries' heritage. The weapons sector, which generates hundreds of billions of dollars in profits every year, is shut down when it says it stops. I don't know how many peers are envious, jealous, and hateful. Originally, Stark Industries shut down the Weapons Research and Development Department, and peers should be happy. After all, they can seize the vacant market. But looking at Stark Industries' 2 new research results, all companies are directly numb. The emergence of new energy will have a huge impact on the traditional energy industry. Nanomaterials will set off a revolution. Some people rejoice and some are worried, and energy and materials companies exclaim, the wolf is coming. And inside the military base. When General Ross saw the news on the internet, he was immediately furious. He shouted in a dark face and gritted his teeth. Abominable Tony Stark, you damn it. I will definitely not let you go. Episode 37. Akali Lake Industrial Center. The next day, Bruce Banner and Tony Stark joined forces and began to research the development of the nano warframe. Lin Fan, on the other hand, left alone and went to the appointment. Regarding the Hulk thing, Bruce Banner and Hulk have reached a settlement. However, if the two want to coexist peacefully, it will take time to run in. If you want to achieve the state of Dr. Green, it is estimated that it will take a long time to adjust. But fortunately, there is already a good start. Lin Fan was pleased with this. If he had the opportunity, such as obtaining some kind of psychic power, he wouldn't mind speeding up the process. After all, the birth of Green Death as soon as possible is also a good thing for him. Not to mention how things are on Tony's side. At this time, Lin Fan had already arrived at the industrial center of Lake Akali. Professor X and others have long been waiting here. In the open space not far away, there was also a spaceship docked, and Lin Fan knew that it was the X-Men's Blackbird fighter. Compared to the technology of the outer world, the X-Men Academy is at least a decade or two ahead. This made Lin Fan think of another hidden country. Wakanda. Using rich vibranium veins, we have developed unique vibranium technology that is at least 30 years ahead of the outside world. If he could, Lin Fan really wanted to go to Wakanda. The nano armor made of vibranium is absolutely terrifying. Taking back his thoughts, Lin Fan looked at the few people in front of him. The other party was also looking at him at this time. In addition to Professor X, who is the leader, he also includes Aurora the Storm Girl, as well as Laser-Eyed Sturk, Robert the Iceman, and Hank the Beast. Obviously, for this operation, the X-Men Academy is very solemn. If it is someone else, I am afraid that the person who comes is not good. But Lin Fan knew very well that Professor X was definitely not targeting himself, but because he knew Jean Grey's situation. Once it was really as he guessed. No amount of people will solve the problem. The hidden dangers in Jean Grey's body, even he felt very tricky. Professor X, it's nice to meet you. Ignoring the vigilant gazes of Stormgirl and the others, Lin Fan greeted with a smile. Huh. Professor X smiled kindly and bowed. Hello, Mr. Lin. Looking at Lin Fan, Professor X was secretly surprised. This person is really too young. You must know that at the same age, he and Eric were still hairy boys. But Lin Fan already had such a powerful strength. It's really better than Blue. Do you know where Jean is? At this moment, Laser Eye suddenly snatched up the words. Tell me, where is Jean now, how is she now? Saying that, he even wanted to rush in front of Lin Fan. Seeing this, Professor X hurriedly reprimanded. Scott, stand down. Teach me. Laser Eye also wants to refute. But seeing Professor X's majestic gaze, he suddenly looked embarrassed and unwilling to return to his original position. But he looked at Lin Fan in front of him deadly. I'm sorry, Mr. Lin. Professor X smiled apologetically and apologized to Lin Fan. Scott cares about chaos, and we're also worried about Jean's situation, I hope you don't mind. Lin Fan shook his head and was non-committal. He didn't care at all about the attitude of Scott and others towards him. It's just a bunch of fledgling rookies. Looking at the endless Lake Akali in the distance, he pointed out. Professor, do you feel it? Under this lake, there is a shocking wave quietly surging. This guy, hide and make a ghost. Sturk's face became even more ugly when he heard this. He always felt that Lin Fan had a problem. Originally, he was looking for Jean Grey, but suddenly received news that someone knew where Jean was. Without even waiting for him to refute, Professor X and the others all rushed over. He was very surprised by the excitement of such a crowd. But when he learned of the deal with Lin Fan, he was even more vigilant, feeling that Lin Fan had a big problem. Why should they pin their hopes for the safety of the piano on an outsider? Moreover, Lin Fan also said that the Jean was dangerous. Are you kidding? How could someone as kind as Jean hurt them? It was clear that Lin Fan was deliberately alarmist. Scott made up his mind that he must keep an eye on Lin Fan and never let this person's conspiracy succeed. But at this moment, Professor X said in a deep voice after a moment of silence. Has she really awakened? It's not obvious. Lin Fan turned around, his eyes flashing and different colored. Hundreds of millions of tons of lake water, only by awakening the power of the phoenix, can Qingulei survive. But halfway through the words, Lin Fan directly kept silent. This suddenly made Scott and others angry. What do you mean by that? Scott finally couldn't help it and asked in a deep voice. What is the power of the phoenix? Where is Jean? I advise you not to engage in any intrigues. When Storm Girl and the others heard this, they also cast questioning eyes. Lin Fan was really suspicious. If it weren't for Jean's safety, they would never have compromised, and they would have directly grabbed Lin Fan and forced him to ask questions. Enough. At this moment, Professor X scolded in a deep voice. But then he sighed and said, This is the end of the matter, I will not hide it from you. There is indeed a terrifying power sealed in the body. Its name is Phoenix Power. Episode 38. What? Hearing what Professor X said, Scott and the others exclaimed. Their faces became extremely ugly in an instant. Especially the laser eye Scott. Originally, he still thought that Lin Fan was alarmist, but he didn't expect that even Professor X would agree. Doesn't that mean that Jean is in a very dangerous situation right now? Damn it. How so? Scott was anxious in his heart and quickly asked. Professor, what the hell is going on? And what is the power of the phoenix? Why have we never heard it before? Storm Girl and the others also looked at Professor X in unison. It was beyond their expectations. Regarding the safety of the piano, they were very concerned and wanted to know what was going on. And most importantly, what they didn't know, how did Lin Fan, an outsider, know? There must be something hidden in this that they don't know. I'm sorry, I hid it from you before. Meeting everyone's gaze, Professor X said apologetically. The main thing is that the Qin thing, once exposed, will bring unnecessary trouble to the Qin, which is a force that cannot be controlled at all. Once the power of the phoenix awakens, the piano we know will cease to exist. If it is used by someone with a heart, not only us, but the entire X-Men Academy will cease to exist. It's a pity that not long ago Jean was. Saying that, Professor X let out a long sigh. Unexpectedly, he had tried his best to avoid it, but in the end, there was still a problem with Jean's body. At this moment, he could feel that a seemingly dangerous aura was permeating. It was as if something terrible was hidden in the secret. Coupled with what Lin Fan said before, if nothing else, I am afraid that the power of the phoenix in the body of the piano has awakened. That terrifying force, even if it was him. Maybe today they can only hope for Lin Fan. Isn't that piano dangerous? Knowing the truth, Scott was suddenly confused. His whole face was extremely ugly. Including Storm Girl and others, they were also full of worry and could not accept this fact. That's not right. At this moment, Scott looked sharply at Lin Fan. He excitedly questioned Lin Fan. How did you know about Jean? Where is Jean? Where is she now? Did you do something to her? At the thought of Jean's precariousness, Scott instantly lost his mind. He even wanted to rush to Lin Fan and question. But Lin Fan would not get used to the other party at all. Noisy. With a cold snort, Lin Fan's eyes flashed. The surrounding magnetic field circulates with a bang. A terrifying stance trembled, like an earth-shattering wave, directly knocking Scott, who rushed forward, to the ground. Storm Girl and the others suddenly made a vigilant posture as if they were approaching a great enemy. A battle conflict is about to break out on the spot. And the party Scott even rolled over and jumped up, forcibly enduring the sore body, and his eyes flashed with blazing fire. Enough. Stop it all. At this moment, Professor X scolded angrily. His whole body flew out of thin air. With the blessing of Nian Li, he turned to look directly at Scott and the others, his face looking very gloomy. And his unprecedented angry appearance suddenly startled everyone. Professor. Scott and the others immediately became panicked. Originally, they still wanted to make a move, but they completely lost their courage and were speechless. Scott, I'm so disappointed in you. Professor X said in a deep voice, his tone extremely heavy. And that's exactly what he was feeling. His original intention of founding Xavier Genius Academy was to protect mutants, and secondly, to teach them to harness their superpowers with kindness. Scott and others were his first students, in which he poured the most effort. But as a result, this group of people were still so reckless and brainless when they encountered things. How could he safely hand over the academy, as well as those poor children, to Scott and the others? Do they continue to cultivate a group of reckless men? I'm sorry, Professor. Scott quickly apologized, and his embarrassed face turned red. The same goes for Stormgirl and others. But Professor X was unmoved, and said in a deep voice. The person you should apologize to is not me, but to Mr. Lin. This is not the attitude towards friends. Scott tried to argue, but was speechless. In the end, he could only say a word ruefully. I'm sorry, Lin. Mr. Lin. Lin Fan watched this farce silently, completely ignoring Scott. He looked at Professor X, who turned around, and said, Can your family ethics farce end? I'll talk about cooperation, not theater. As soon as these words came out, Scott and others were embarrassed and indignant. But they can't even refute it. Only Professor X accepted it calmly, and said with a wry smile. Let Mr. Lin see the joke, and ask Mr. Lin's forgiveness. They are still a group of children. Well, I'm not interested in them. Lin Fan interrupted directly, not bothering to pay attention. He hated this rhetoric the most. Among the X-Men, he still admires Eric Magneto, and only strength can fight for his voice. And Professor X's blind compromise, the final result is also obvious. But none of this has anything to do with Lin Fan. He will only make himself stronger, do whatever he wants, and do whatever he wants. Let's get down to business. Speaking indifferently, Lin Fan said bluntly. Jean's location is right here. I've done what I promised, so what about my request? Episode 39. What? Jean is right here? Scott exclaimed violently. Including Stormgirl and others, they also looked at the surrounding situation, but did not find any trace of the piano. Only Professor X looked thoughtful, and his expression became more and more solemn. Mr. Lin, please rest assured. Suppressing the uneasiness in his heart, Professor X said in a deep voice. When we solve the problem of the piano, we will do our best to meet your request, Mr. Lin. I trust your credibility, Professor. Lin Fan nodded when he heard this. The purpose of this trip is achieved, and the next thing to do is to watch the play. He is also very much looking forward to the birth of the Black Phoenix. Maybe from Jean Grey, he can trigger the system mechanism of understanding against the sky, and once again let him get some new abilities. And Professor X and others are not weak, they are also good tool people. Professor, where the hell is Jean? Scott asked anxiously. Having personally experienced Lin Fan's terrifying strength, he learned to be obedient this time, and did not dare to shout at Lin Fan again. But for Lin Fan, he was still very resistant in his heart. Although Lin Fan didn't care about these at all. Right there. Professor X raised his hand and pointed to Lake Akali and said in a deep voice. If I'm not mistaken, after the piano was flooded by the lake, he should have sunk into the depths of Lake Akali. The bottom of the lake? How can it be? Scott is hard to cherish. Stormgirl and the others also felt strange. Jean has been missing for 3 days. If Jean was at the bottom of the lake, how did she survive for 3 days without drowning? What's more, with the strong water pressure at the bottom of the lake, it is not something that ordinary people can withstand. Hey, that's because of the power of the Phoenix. Professor X sighed again and shook his head. The terrifying power of the Phoenix is not at all what you can imagine. I'm afraid the Jean is not the one we know now. Buzz. Boom. Almost at the same time as the words fell, the change suddenly broke out. A terrifying force swept through. It was originally a quiet lake, and the waves suddenly burst into shock, as if a storm was coming. The whole lake of Akali is like boiling water. This sudden change made Scott and others change color in shock. They looked at Lake Akali in shock. I don't know what came to mind. Scott turned sharply to look at Professor X, and said in a deep voice. Professor, is this just? That's right. Professor X nodded heavily, his expression solemn. Unexpectedly, they were still late. Originally, he also thought of relying on his spiritual power to help Jean channel the power of the Phoenix in his body and suppress the appearance of the Black Phoenix. It's a pity that one step is slow, and the Black Phoenix is finally born. He could feel the terrifying spiritual fluctuations coming from the bottom of the lake. Even he felt a lot of pressure, and it seemed that the situation of Qin this time was very dangerous. If you don't handle it well, the consequences are unimaginable. Scott, be prepared. Sighing secretly, Professor X said in a heavy tone. The current piano is very much no longer the piano we know. If things can't be done, we can only. What? Professor, don't. Scott was shocked when he heard this. Although Professor X did not say it explicitly, they instantly realized what the second half of the sentence was. The piano that loses its mind is definitely a very big hidden danger. And in the face of this situation, as a force that prides itself on upholding justice, they have to clean the door no matter what. But that's clearly something he doesn't want to see. Professor, isn't there any other option? That's a piano after all. Stormgirl also persuaded and asked. Professor. Scott looked expectant. But alas, Professor X shook his head and said. This is the worst option. It is also the last choice, and it is our only choice. Hearing this, everyone suddenly fell silent. Everyone's mood sank to the bottom. And the vision in the distance did not converge in any way because of the mood of several people. On the contrary, the whole surface of the lake boiled wildly. Is this the power of the Phoenix? Lin Fan watched silently, and his eyes flashed with surprise. He also didn't expect such a coincidence. However, as far as he is concerned, it doesn't matter when the Dark Phoenix appears, he is just acting as a spectator anyway. Of course, if he could, he wouldn't mind sending a favor. Mr. Lin, Professor X looked at Lin Fan and wanted to say something. But before he could finish his sentence, the surface of the lake suddenly exploded, and a silhouette slowly flew out from below the surface of the water. I saw that its body was shrouded in blazing flames, and a dark red phoenix swirled and flew. Terrifying power swept around like a tidal wave. The lake below has sunk into a bottomless inverted pit, and the raging waves are pouring towards the shore. Not good. Professor, be careful. Scott and the others were shocked and quickly blocked in front of Professor X. The storm woman reached out with both hands and released the storm. A terrifying hurricane enveloped the scene, trying to suppress the incoming waves, but the huge waves more than 10 meters high did not abate. Even the silhouette in the sky cast its gaze here. The Phoenix. What? Jean is right here? Scott exclaimed violently. Including Stormgirl and others, they also looked at the surrounding situation, but did not find any trace of the piano. Only Professor X looked thoughtful, and his expression became more and more solemn. Mr. Lin, please rest assured. Suppressing the uneasiness in his heart, Professor X said in a deep voice. When we solve the problem of the piano, we will do our best to meet your request, Mr. Lin. I trust your credibility, Professor. Lin Fan nodded when he heard this. The purpose of this trip is achieved, and the next thing to do is to watch the play. He is also very much looking forward to the birth of the Black Phoenix. Maybe from Jean Grey, he can trigger the system mechanism of understanding against the sky, and once again let him get some new abilities. And Professor X and others are not weak, they are also good tool people. Professor, where the hell is Jean? Scott asked anxiously. Having personally experienced Lin Fan's terrifying strength, he learned to be obedient this time, and did not dare to shout at Lin Fan again. But for Lin Fan, he was still very resistant in his heart. Although Lin Fan didn't care about these at all. Right there. Professor X raised his hand and pointed to Lake Akali and said in a deep voice. If I'm not mistaken, after the piano was flooded by the lake, he should have sunk into the depths of Lake Akali. The bottom of the lake? How can it be? Scott is hard to cherish. Stormgirl and the others also felt strange. Jean has been missing for 3 days. If Jean was at the bottom of the lake, how did she survive for 3 days without drowning? What's more, with the strong water pressure at the bottom of the lake, it is not something that ordinary people can withstand. Hey, that's because of the power of the Phoenix. Professor X sighed again and shook his head. The terrifying power of the Phoenix is not at all what you can imagine. I'm afraid the Jean is not the one we know now. Buzz. Boom. Almost at the same time as the words fell, the change suddenly broke out. A terrifying force swept through. It was originally a quiet lake, and the waves suddenly burst into shock, as if a storm was coming. The whole lake of Akali is like boiling water. This sudden change made Scott and others change color in shock. They looked at Lake Akali in shock. I don't know what came to mind. Scott turned sharply to look at Professor X and said in a deep voice. Professor, is this just? That's right. Professor X nodded heavily, his expression solemn. Unexpectedly, they were still late. Originally, he also thought of relying on his spiritual power to help Qin channel the power of the phoenix in his body and suppress the appearance of the black phoenix. It's a pity that one step is slow, and the black phoenix is finally born. He could feel the terrifying spiritual fluctuations coming from the bottom of the lake. Even he felt a lot of pressure, and it seemed that the situation of Qin this time was very dangerous. If you don't handle it well, the consequences are unimaginable. Scott, be prepared. Sighing secretly, Professor X said in a heavy tone. The current piano is very much no longer the piano we know. If things can't be done, we can only. What? Professor, don't. Scott was shocked when he heard this. Although Professor X did not say it explicitly, they instantly realized what the second half of the sentence was. The piano that loses its mind is definitely a very big hidden danger. And in the face of this situation, as a force that prides itself on upholding justice, they have to clean the door no matter what. But that's clearly something he doesn't want to see. Professor, isn't there any other option? That's a piano after all. Storm Girl also persuaded and asked. Professor. Scott looked expectant. But alas, Professor X shook his head and said. This is the worst option. It is also the last choice, and it is our only choice. Hearing this, everyone suddenly fell silent. Everyone's mood sank to the bottom. And the vision in the distance did not converge in any way because of the mood of several people. On the contrary, the whole surface of the lake boiled wildly. Is this the power of the phoenix? Lin Fan watched silently, and his eyes flashed with surprise. He also didn't expect such a coincidence. However, as far as he is concerned, it doesn't matter when the dark phoenix appears, he is just acting as a spectator anyway. Of course, if he could, he wouldn't mind sending a favor. Mr. Lin, Professor X looked at Lin Fan and wanted to say something. But before he could finish his sentence, the surface of the lake suddenly exploded, and a silhouette slowly flew out from below the surface of the water. I saw that its body was shrouded in blazing flames, and a dark red phoenix swirled and flew. Terrifying power swept around like a tidal wave. The lake below has sunk into a bottomless inverted pit, and the raging waves are pouring towards the shore. Not good. Professor, be careful. Scott and the others were shocked and quickly blocked in front of Professor X. The storm woman reached out with both hands and released the storm. A terrifying hurricane enveloped the scene, trying to suppress the incoming waves, but the huge waves more than 10 meters high did not abate. Even the silhouette in the sky cast its gaze here. The Phoenix. Episode 40. With a beam of icy eyes projected. The raging waves below became more and more terrifying in an instant, like a tsunami disaster that destroyed the world and the earth. The storm condensed by the storm woman didn't even have the slightest effect. Ororo, I'll help you. Seeing this, the iceman quickly squatted and pressed his hand to the ground. The icy power of extreme cold is constantly surging towards the lake. The ground along the way is directly frozen. Under the influence of the storm, the endless cold instantly froze a radius of 10,000 meters into ice. The sweeping waves can be considered contained. Phew. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they saw this. Scott looked at the silhouette high in the air and shouted excitedly. Jean, it's me. Scott. At this time, Scott was very happy. Although the piano feels very strange, he can see that the piano is safe and sound, and the heart he has always carried has finally let go. As for what Professor X said before, he has forgotten it all. And he will also pay for his stupidity and recklessness. Whoops. A scream sounded, and the dark red phoenix cast its gaze. Jean's cold eyes were shining. Attracted by Scott's attention, she surged with terrifying power, and with a wave of her hand, she released a monstrous flame. The flames wrapped in the power of the phoenix roared towards Scott. The air along the way was even twisted by the flames. The sudden change made Scott stunned in place. That terrifying power was like death coming. One moment he stopped thinking, watching the flames overwhelm the sky, and the next moment he could burn him to ashes. Scott, flash away. The Storm Girl and the others changed color in shock and hurriedly shouted. But Jean's attack came too quickly and suddenly. Even if it is them, they only have time to remind them, and they don't even have a chance to shoot. Only Professor X's heart sank, and his majestic spiritual power surged with vigor. Scott suddenly felt a huge force tug at him. Before he could react, the whole person flew up directly, and appeared 100 meters away with Storm Girl and the others. Including Professor X himself, he was also shocked to look at the scene in the distance. Heavenly flames fell overwhelmingly on the ground. The ground, which was frozen into ice by the iceman, was melted by the high temperature in an instant, and even the ground was burned into a deep pit. The raging fire erupted like a volcano, and the hot gas evaporated. This scene of a song of ice and fire is shocking. Shoo! Oh my god! Storm Girl and the others gasped, and their hearts were afraid for a while. Fortunately, Professor X intervened to save them. Otherwise, in the face of Jean's attack, I am afraid that they will really have a tragic scene of killing each other, as Lin Fan said. Scott, in particular, was already in a state of mind at this time. Nope. How so? Jean, what's wrong with you? Aren't we friends? Scott was desperate at this time. As Jean's admirer, he can't accept harsh reality. Could it be that Jean has really become a puppet of power? If he could, he really wanted to bear all this instead of the other party, and only hoped that Jean would be alive and sound. It's just a pity that he can't do anything. At the same time, Storm Girl and the others noticed another thing. What about Mr. Lin? I don't know who said it, and suddenly everyone looked around. But Lin Fan's figure could not be seen around at all. It's not going to die, is it? Said so much, the result is this? Scott said with some sneering. Originally, he was in a bad mood, and when he heard the exclamation of the Storm Girl, he suddenly seemed to have found an outlet. And for Lin Fan, he didn't have a good impression from beginning to end. Of course, the most important thing was that he was crushed by Lin Fan just now. If Lin Fan was killed by Jean's attack, he would not have any mercy. Scott, you. Professor X was dissatisfied and wanted to reprimand. He knew Lin Fan's strength very well, and even if it was him, he might not be Lin Fan's opponent. The so-called woe comes from the mouth. Scott has no reverence and will only bring disaster to himself. But before he could finish a sentence, the flames in the distance slowly dissipated, and the steaming water vapor dissipated, revealing the scene at the center of the explosion. And looking at the scene in front of them, Storm Girl and the others suddenly widened their eyes. Even Professor X choked on all the words. This. How is this possible? Scott exclaimed in disbelief, feeling that people were stupid. I saw that at this time it was at the center of the explosion. Lin Fan, who was originally regarded as a dead person by him, was standing indifferently out of thin air, and there was an invisible position around his body. The flame that could easily take his life was directly isolated. This scene suddenly stunned everyone present. If Scott and others are unconscious, then Professor X, as a strong person, feels this more deeply and strongly. He could sense that the magnetic fields around Lin Fan's body overlapped. Those interlaced magnetic fields isolate all attacks. This inevitably reminded him of an old man. The other party also controls the magnetic field, even the same as Lin Fan, there is no difference. No. Wrong. Compared to Lin Fan, that old man was slightly inferior. Especially Lin Fan is very young. Young? Could it be that Lin Fan is Eric's illegitimate son outside? Professor X had a bold idea in his mind. When he looked at Lin Fan again, his gaze became strange, just like an elder looking at an excellent junior.